Welcome to Trend Nightmare, your ultimate destination for spine-chilling tales and unsettling true stories. Dive deep into the dark corners of reality where the ordinary becomes horrifying. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that will keep you up at night. Now, let's step into the nightmare. Story: Lost at Sea. When Mark and his wife Julia booked a cruise to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary, they were looking forward to a week of relaxation and adventure on the open seas. The ship, the Majestic Dream, was a floating paradise with luxurious amenities, fine dining, and countless activities. The first few days were everything they had hoped for, filled with sunshine, laughter, and new friends. But on the fourth night, things took a dark turn. After an evening of dining and dancing, Mark and Julia retired to their cabin. The gentle rocking of the ship lulled them to sleep, but in the early hours of the morning, Mark woke up feeling He glanced at the clock. 3 cm and Julia was still asleep beside him, but something felt off. He decided to get up and get some fresh air. As Mark stepped onto their private balcony, he was met with an eerie stillness. The ocean, usually alive with the sounds of waves and the distant hum of the ship's engines, was strangely silent. He felt a sudden chill and turned to go back inside, but as he did, he noticed something in the water. A faint, distant glow. Curiosity got the better of him, and he leaned over the railing for a better look. The glow seemed to be moving closer, but it was erratic, like a flickering light. As it approached, Mark realized it was a life raft bobbing up. His heart raced as he spotted a figure inside, waving frantically. Mark ran inside to wake Julia. "There's someone out there. They need help," he shouted, grabbing his phone to call the ship's emergency line. The crew responded quickly, and within minutes, a rescue team was dispatched. As the team brought the life raft on board, Mark and Julia watched from their balcony, hearts pounding. The figure inside the raft was a young woman, drenched and shivering. She looked terrified. The crew wrapped her in blankets and escorted her to the medical bay. Later that morning, Mark and Julia learned that the woman had been missing for 2 days. She was a passenger from another cruise ship, the Ocean Breeze, which had reported her overboard. The circumstances of her disappearance were unclear, and the woman, still in shock, could barely speak. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. That night, he and Julia sat in the ship's lounge, discussing the strange events. They were approached by an older couple, David and Carol, who had also witnessed the rescue. David leaned in, his voice low. "We've been on a lot of cruises, but we've never seen anything like this," he said. "There's something they're not telling us." Over the next few days, Mark and Julia tried to enjoy the remainder of their trip, but the incident hung over them like a dark cloud. They heard whispers among the crew and other passengers about strange occurrences on the ship, unexplained noises, missing items, and a pervasive sense of dread. On the final night of the cruise, as they prepared to disembark the next morning, Mark and Julia were jolted awake by a loud bang. The power went out, plunging their cabin into darkness. Panic set in as they heard screams and frantic footsteps in the hallway. Mark grabbed a flashlight and opened the door to find chaos. People were running in all directions, and the air was thick with fear. He and Julia joined the crowd, making their way to the main deck. The ship's emergency lights cast an eerie glow, and they saw crew members struggling to maintain order. As they reached the deck, they saw the young woman from the life raft standing at the edge, her eyes wide with terror. She pointed out to sea, her voice barely a whisper. "They're coming for us." Before anyone could react, a massive wave crashed over the side of the ship, knocking everyone off their feet. Mark clung to Julia, praying they would survive. When the wave subsided, they were drenched and shaken, but alive. The young woman was gone. The next morning, the ship limped into port and the passengers disembarked in a daze. Mark and Julia never found out what truly happened that night, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they had narrowly escaped something far more sinister than a simple story. 2. The Disappearing Crew. Emma had always dreamed of taking a cruise. When she finally saved enough money for a solo trip, she chose the Starlight Serenity, a renowned ship known for its luxurious accommodations and world-class service. She was excited to leave her worries behind and embark on a week-long adventure to exotic destinations. The first few days were magical. Emma enjoyed gourmet meals, attended entertaining shows, and made new friends. She quickly grew fond of the ship's crew, who were friendly and attentive. But on the third day, she noticed something strange. One of the waiters, a young man named Alex, was missing. Emma asked around, but no one seemed to know where Alex had gone. The crew members she spoke to seemed uneasy, quickly changing the subject. She found it odd, but tried not to dwell on it. After all, the ship employed a large staff, and it was possible Alex had simply been reassigned. That evening, Emma attended a cocktail party in the ship's grand ballroom. She was chatting with a fellow passenger, Megan, when the ship's lights flickered and went out. A murmur of confusion spread through the room, but with the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, assuring everyone that it was just a minor technical issue. Emma tried to shake off the unease, but later that night, she overheard a conversation between two crew members. "Another one gone," one whispered. Curiosity piqued, Emma decided to investigate. She approached Megan, who had also noticed the strange behavior among the crew. Together, they started discreetly asking questions and observing their surroundings. They soon discovered that several crew members had vanished without a trace. The ship's management was tight-lipped, insisting that the missing staff had either left the ship at port or were dealing with personal issues. But Emma and Megan weren't convinced. There were too many coincidences, and the remaining crew seemed on edge, as if they were hiding something. One night, Emma and Megan decided to explore the lower decks, areas usually off-limits to passengers. They snuck past a security guard and made their way through the dimly lit corridors. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped. They found a door marked maintenance and slipped inside. The room was cluttered with tools and equipment, but what caught their attention was a series of old, yellowed maps pinned to the wall. One map, in particular, stood out. It depicted the ship's route, with strange symbols and markings along certain points. As they examined it, they heard footsteps approaching. They quickly hid behind a stack of crates as two crew members entered the room. "We need to do something about this," one said, his voice tense. "If the passengers find out, it could be the end of us." "What choice do we have?" the other replied. "We can't stop it. The ship is cursed." Emma and Megan exchanged frightened glances. They waited until the crew members left before sneaking back to their cabin. That night, they barely slept, haunted by what they had heard. The next morning, the ship docked at a tropical island. Emma and Megan decided to report their findings to the authorities, but when they disembarked, they were met by the ship's security team. The guards escorted them to a secluded area where the captain and several officers were waiting. "We understand you're concerned," the captain said, his tone icy. "But I assure you, there's nothing to worry about. Our crew is perfectly safe." Emma and Megan tried to argue, but the captain cut them off. "You're free to enjoy the rest of your cruise, but I advise you to stay out of restricted areas. For your..." Feeling powerless, they returned to the ship, their minds racing. They decided to stay together and keep a low profile for the remainder of the trip. But on the final night, as the ship sailed back to its home port, Megan went missing. Emma searched everywhere, but Megan was nowhere to be found. She reported her disappearance to the crew, but they were dismissive, insisting that Megan had likely disembarked at the last port. Emma knew better. When the ship finally docked, Emma was the first to leave. She reported everything to the local authorities, but there was little they could do without concrete evidence. The Starlight Serenity continued to operate, and the disappearances remained unsolved. Emma never took another cruise. She couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was hiding a dark secret, one that had claimed the lives of innocent crew members and her friend. The memories of that terrifying journey haunted her for the rest of her life. Story 3. The Ghost of Cabin 413. When Olivia and her friends booked a cruise on the Oceanic Splendor, they were looking forward to a fun-filled week of sun, sea, and adventure. The ship was known for its luxurious accommodations and exciting activities, and they couldn't wait to explore everything it had to offer. They were assigned cabin 413, a spacious suite with a balcony and stunning ocean view. The first night on the ship, the group was too excited to sleep. They stayed up late, enjoying drinks and laughing about their plans for the week. As the night wore on, Olivia decided to turn in early. She bid her friends goodnight and headed to the cabin. As she settled into bed, she felt a strange unease, as if someone was watching her. She dismissed it as pre-cruise jitters and tried to sleep. But in the middle of the night, she was jolted awake by a loud thud. She sat up, heart racing, and listened. The room was silent, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The next morning, she mentioned the incident to her friends, but they laughed it off, teasing her about ghost stories. Olivia tried to join in the fun, but the uneasy feeling lingered. That night, she heard the thud again, followed by faint whispers. She was too scared to move, lying in bed with her eyes squeezed shut until morning. On the third night, Olivia decided to stay up and see if she could figure out the source of the noise. Around midnight, the room grew cold, and she heard the thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. She turned on the light, but the room was empty. She checked the hallway, but it was deserted. Determined to find out what was going on, Olivia asked the cabin steward if anyone had experienced strange occurrences in cabin 413. The steward's expression changed, and he hesitated before replying. "There have been stories," he said quietly. "Some say the cabin is haunted." Olivia pressed for more details, and the steward reluctantly shared the tale of a passenger who had died in the cabin years ago. The woman, named Margaret, had been on the cruise with her husband. One night, during a heated argument, she fell overboard and drowned. Some believed her spirit had returned to the cabin, unable to find peace. Olivia's friends were skeptical, but she couldn't ignore the strange occurrences. That night, she set up her phone to record while she slept. When she reviewed the footage the next morning, her blood ran cold. The video showed the door to the balcony opening and closing on its own, followed by a faint, ghostly figure moving across the room. She showed the video to her friends, who were now thoroughly spooked. They decided to request a cabin change, but the ship was fully booked. With no other options, they agreed to stick together and take turns staying awake to watch over each other. On the final night of the cruise, Olivia's friend Rachel was on watch. Around 2 a.m, Olivia woke to find Rachel staring at something in the corner of the room, her face pale with fear. Olivia followed her gaze and saw the ghostly figure of a woman standing there, her eyes filled with sorrow. The figure slowly moved towards the balcony door, then disappeared. Rachel and Olivia were too terrified to move. They stayed awake until morning, when they hurried to disembark and leave the ship behind. Back home, Olivia researched the history of the Oceanic Splendor and discovered that several passengers had reported similar experiences in cabin 413. Despite the terrifying ordeal, she felt a strange sympathy for Margaret's rest. Olivia shared her story online, hoping to warn others about the haunted cabin. The video she recorded went viral, sparking debates about the existence of ghosts and the ethics of using the cabin for passengers. The cruise line eventually sealed off cabin 413, but Olivia knew that Margaret's spirit would continue to haunt the ship, forever searching for peace.